What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr Wargames. Now, we have our regional coming up this weekend, so I thought it'd be a good idea to give you guys out there, so maybe some of the younger duelists or just in general, some of the duelists, side deck options. So side deck can be probably the most important area of your deck when facing other meta players or other decks just in general. And there's certain cards that you should probably have in your deck. There's cheaper alternatives, and then there's just some fun little ones I've put in here that people might not expect and might catch them off guard and could in turn win you the game. So I'm going to go through monsters, spells and traps, but I'm going to do it in different sections. I'm going to do, so the little top piles are ones that if you're not maining, these are probably 90% you want on your side. If you have to try and get hold of these, or a card of alternative choice because of the value. So I'll go straight through it. I'll explain what decks they can hit and explain just how they help. And again, some of your side deck choices are down to the deck that you run yourself, so bear that in mind. Anyway, let's start. Let's move all these out of the way. Let's start with the monsters. So, starting up, DD Crow. I'll zoom in so you guys can see it better. DD Crow. Now, yes, there are other types like this. There are other cards. So basically, DD Crow, during either player's turn, is a hand trap. You discard this card, target one card in your opponent's graveyard, banish that target. Now, there are other alternatives to this. There's like the Ally of Justice, which I have put to one side, because to me personally, so there's your Ally of Justice, during either player's turn, you discard this card to the graveyard, target up to 2 light monsters in your opponent's graveyard, banish those targets. Now, I personally think DD Crow is better. Now, the reason I think DD Crow is better is the fact that it targets one card. So it can target your Metaphors Fusion, it can target any of your DD cards. You can banish their swirls or their slimes before they can activate their effects. It can hit Dark Magicians if they want to bring stuff back with Eternal Souls. It can hit your Toad. It can hit Toad Heroes when they target to reshuffle. Obviously, it can hit Northern targets as well. Overall, it's a very, very nice rounded card. It can hit Blue Eyes. It can pretty much hit 90% of the meta decks out there and 90% of the decks that you're going to be facing yourself. Now, I expect when you come to a regional, at this moment in time, the top decks you're looking at facing will be like Paleozoics, Toads, Toad Heroes, Metal Foes, DDDs now that they're out. You'll have the odd Blue Eyes, Dark Magician, and then just the general fun decks that people are going to want to play. And I think DD Crow is a nice all-round card that you can put into your side deck and go, I feel this is going to hit quite a lot of decks. Next up is Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. Now this one is a bit more costly. It's probably your higher end of the side deck cards, but it does come with a catch. So when putting this in, it's probably best suited for an extra deck that has space, an extra deck that can put in. So basically the effect is, during either player's turn, if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you discard this card, reveal one card in your extra deck, then look at your opponent's extra deck, also banish all cards in their extra deck with the same name as the revealed card. You only use the effect of Reaper once per turn. So the idea is you drop this card, and then you stop them going into their main XZs or fusions, so you can target their Dark Claw for heroes. It's a little less so for Metaphors, but I mean you can halt their plays up by hitting their Mithrilium or hitting their Alkahest. You can hit the Dark Magician XYZ, you can hit Spirit Dragon, so it can hit quite a lot. But again, it's more expensive and more specific to the deck you run. If you have space in your extra deck, then you can put them in. If not, it's probably ideal for the mirror matches. The other Ghost is Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbits. During either player's turn, when a monster on the field activates its effect, or when a spell or trap card that is already face up on the field activates this effect, you can send this card from your hand or your side of the field to the graveyard, destroy this card, and destroy the card on the field. So it allows the effect to resolve, however it doesn't keep the card there. So it can, sometimes when monsters need to activate their effect to build up for their second turn and then they sit on it, beat through and go, this can stop that. It's relatively cheap. You can pick up in gold or in super. It's a cheap card to do. It's a nice little effect negator, but then obviously you do have alternatives like Effect Veiler, which actually just stops the effects. So the difference between the two is one stops the doesn't stop the effect but destroys the card. The other one stops the effect. Now obviously they target, so that's a bit of an issue. Well, I know Effect Veiler does. Let me double check on this one. You can send this card from your graveyard, hand your side of the field to the graveyard, destroy that card. No, so I don't think Ghost Ogre targets. So that's a nice thing, it doesn't target. But Effect Veiler, again, it's a nice cheap option. And it just stops your opponent plays. It stops your opponent going off, stops them doing a bit more. I mean, example in Toad Heroes, they can activate Bahamut Shark, detach, you drop an Effect Veiler, they're not getting a Toad out. So it's a very, very nice card to play. Flying Sea stops the XYZ straight off. So it can hurt Toad Heroes straight away, it can hurt Toad Paleozoics. It can also hurt, not so much Dark Magician, but it can slow them down. It can slow down the Blue Eyes as well if they're building an XY, if they're going more for XYZ. It's a nice card to have. I mean, it's not as integral because there are other cards that you can probably stop, but it's a nice alternative to, depending if you're playing an XYZ heavy opponent. Next up, Maxi. Now, Maxi is an interesting card. Me, personally, I don't like it. However, there is a like alternative out there where even though you might not draw a lot, so if you drop Maxi on your opponent and they just go end my turn, even if you don't draw a lot, you've still stopped their play. You still had to make them stop and think. And I mean, this seriously works well against DDDs. If your opponent, as a DDD player, to get a steady board for them, they have to give you like 2 to 3 draws at the very least if you drop this during the start of their turn. Otherwise, they can't progress as far as they would like to. It can also hit stuff like Dark Lords. It can hit pretty much everything. Toad Heroes. Yes, they can stop, but again, they need to have a standard board. If they want their Toad Heroes for protection for Dark Lord, they kind of need it. So this card helps massively. It's a little bit more pricey now. It has gone up, but if you have them, I do recommend either maining it or siding it. Next up, the one that everyone's gonna have is some form of Kaiju. Maybe more Gamma Seal than Raiden, but again, it depends what type of deck you run. If you run a deck with Allures, this is probably your better target. If you run a deck of level 8, your Gamma Seal's the better target. Now, in conjunction with the Kaiju, I do have 2 other honourable mentions, which I think is kind of like a nice little add-in. So you've got Ra Sphere mode, not as important because it requires 3 tributes, but if your opponent's building up a big board, you can clear that off. But one that I feel is a much better option at this moment in time during this meta is Lava Golem. Now, Lava Golem is a level 8, so it works in Dark Lords really nicely and it works in Blue Eyes really nicely. And this card clears off 2 monsters off the board. So you look at your standard boards at the moment, Toad Heroes, Dark Claw, Toad, Shark. This gets rid of your Toad and your Dark Claw. DDDs, you look at their best board, Crystal, Siegfried, Hope Harbinger. You're getting rid of 2 of those easy just by dropping a Lava Golem on them. Metaphors, if they build up their board, you can easily drop this on them as well. The only issue that I see with Lava Golem is if your opponent can build 1 monster and sit on it, then you're kind of stuck because it has to have 2 tributes. However, a nice combination of one and one could work quite nicely for you as well. Either or. Lava Golem's relatively cheap. It got printed in a rare. You can probably pick it up for like £1, and I think it's a really, really good card to play. And then Kaiju's, again, really, really good cards, and it's more deck specific as well. So that's kind of it for the main monsters that I recommend every kind of side deck should either have or should be maining. Just for if you can afford them. I mean, there are cheaper options, like I said. I mean, your Effect Value is probably a cheaper option to your Ghost Ogre, but again, depends what rarity you really want. DD Crow is one of my personal favourites, really, really like it. Flying Sea, Maxi, and then Lava Golem being a cheaper alternative with a Kaiju as well. This is going to be a very long video, guys, so just stick with me. Now we'll do some honourable mentions of the monsters, then we'll keep going through the spells and traps. So, Ally of Justice, Cycle Reader, already touched on that one. Kaiku Miru Drago, this is really good in Blue Eyes, so both for those players playing against Blue Eyes and playing Blue Eyes, this card can be a real pain in the butt. During either player's end phase, destroy this card unless you can send 1 Iron Core or Kaiku Miru from your hand to the graveyard, or reveal 1 Dragon type monster in your hand. Neither player can special summon light or dark monsters. This card will lock out your DDDs, this card will lock out your Dark Magicians, this card will lock out your Blue Eyes. But if your Blue Eyes has already built a board and you're sitting on this guy at 1900 attack, it is still very, very strong and very, very good. Vanity's Fiend, This guy will be in Dark Lords. This guy can be, if you think your opponent is going to be special summoning heavily, you drop this card on there. Now, just as a note, you cannot Kaiju Slumber or Kaiju while Vanities is on the field. Kaijus count as attributed special summon. So you cannot Kaiju Vanities Fiend. So be wary of that. The best way to get rid of these is Regekis, Dark Holes, or just generally be able to beat over them if you can, but there's very few cards in the game that can beat over a 2400. Next up we've got Ally of Justice Quarantine. Again, 1700 beta, and neither plague special summon light monsters. So this is very more specific towards the Blue Eyes deck than anything else. Two that are very, very similar, but again, very, very good. If you do not play heavy trap lineups, Denko Sekka is probably the best one. It is really quite expensive at the moment. I mean, I think it's about 15 quid, maybe a little bit more. But you drop this guy, you're protected. Especially if you're playing a pendulum build and you don't really worry about your... you don't worry too much about your normal summon. You drop a Denko, your opponent either has to use their warning to get rid of Denko, otherwise they're locked out for good. So the worst case scenario is you drop your Denko, they're warning your Denko, and then they're going to strike your pendulum summon. But either way, you drop your Denko, they're locked out. It's, you know, good night Irene, you're going to be able to fill your board up. Same kind of works for Jinzo, but again, Jinzo's a little bit harder to get out. I just love the artwork and just love the card in general. You've got stuff like Jolgan, the Spiritualist. You can discard one random card from your hand to the graveyard, destroy or special summon monsters on the field. Neither player can special summon monsters. So this card is nice to pendulum out in metaphors, just sit with a heavy board and just go, good night, good luck, see you later. Fairy Tale Snow, really like this card. If you have a hefty graveyard, this card can win you games, change you games, and help you out. It's a very nice cheap alternative, but again, it's down to the deck that you are playing, bear that in mind. Now I've gone with cards that I like that end the battle phase or stop the battle phase, or if your opponent feels that they're going to win the game, you can stop them in their tracks. So stuff like Speedroy Menko, again, it depends on what type of deck you're playing. This can easily be like battle faders and stuff like that. And another one is Electromagnetic Turtle. If you're going to be milling, this card can be in your grave, or if you can discard this easy. So I mean, if you have an ABC version of with Galaxy Soldiers, you can dump this guy. You've got this in your grave for a bit of protection. Not that you need it, but it's there just in case. Victoria, very nice. It looks amazing. It's a very nice card against Blue Eyes or any dragon deck for that sake. You can normal this card, and then you special summon one dragon monster from your opponent's graveyard to your side of the field. Your opponent cannot select other face-up fairy-type monsters for attacks. Again, just a nice little touch. You don't have to play this. This is just a funny little tech that I like putting in. Thunder King Row, again, very, very nice card. Neither player can add cards from their deck to the hand, except by drawing them. You can send this face-up card to the graveyard to negate the special summon of one of your opponent's monsters and destroy it. Now, there are quite a lot of decks at the moment that add cards to the hand, so maybe Rail is not the best in your deck. Unlike stuff like Metaphors, Metaphors can get away with playing this. DDDs add. There are so many decks that want to add to the hand. Toad Heroes, they want to add to the hand. Stuff like Mistake and Rail are very, very good. Now, I do have some better alternatives in the spell section, which when I get there, we will go through. And then my last monster is Chaos Hunter. Sorry, this is the Italian one, my bad. But Chaos Hunter stops your opponent banishing. When they special summon a monster, you discard one card, special summon this card, and your opponent cannot banish monsters. Very, very good card. It's a 2500 beta, a dark, and a level 7, so it works perfect if you're in a lore target, if you can drop rank 7s, and if you like play Dark Magicians. But again, it's very, very good. You can put this in DDDs if you want to and stop your opponent banishing stuff like, so if they're playing ABCs and if they're playing DDs themselves, you can also stop them and lock them out. So that's it for the monsters. Again, the second lot is just some alternatives, some cheaper than others, just to help you kind of get through the game. Now we'll go on to the spells. So there's only about 4 cards that I say you should be maining or siding or are pretty much seen in most decks. So Regeki is pretty standard. If you're not maining it, side it. If not, this can also be a Dark Hole. Twin Twisters, MSTs, anything like this, but 9 times out of 10 you're probably maining Twin Twisters over the MSTs. Book of Eclipse, it kind of saves you a turn. It lets your opponent draw, but it saves you that turn if need be. And it's a bit better than Quaking because obviously it's a quick play, so even if your opponent tries to pop it, you chain it and off you go. Sifting Down, just to get rid of your ABCs, banish all of that, and if anyone's still playing Cosmo, to kind of boost them out as well. So So they're quite standard spells there. Now we'll start moving to other ones that I think can catch your opponent by surprise and can actually help you out quite a bit. So Book of Moon, yes it targets, but I think it catches your opponent by surprise. They don't expect this as much, so when they're hit with it, I mean especially against DDDs, let's say they've got a Siegfried and a Crystal Wing on board. If you Book of Moon targeting Crystal Wing, they're either going to go negate, and then you can drop this can be a really nice bait, and you can drop a Regeki or whatever and clear the board, or they let their Crystal Wing get flipped just for protection. You've got rid of your Crystal Wing, you start using monster effects to pop the Siegfried. Prohibition, really like this card. It's a little bit not so useful in this day and age, but it's quite nice to drop a Prohibition, call their main card. If you know your opponent's main card is Dark Magician, ABC Buster Dragon, Metaphors Mithrillium, DD Flanking Genghis. If you have two of these in your start, you can easily you can call Twin Twisters or MSTs to try and stop destruction. You could call Gofu, you could call whatever you wanted to. It's just a nice little touch that I quite like playing. Again, it's not as effective in this game day and age for the pure fact that there's so many MSTs, Twin Twisters and whatnot, that there's so many ways to pop back row, but it can stall your opponent and catch them by surprise. Galaxy Cyclone. Now obviously it's not as quick as Cosmic Cyclone and your other alternatives, but you do get 2 pops with this. So it's not as specific, you have to target a set spell or trap card on the field to pop it, but then you can banish it and pop another one. So it's a kind of a 2-for-1 deal. Again, it might catch your opponent by surprise, not expecting it, but without it being quick play, it does have a disadvantage. Cosmic Cyclone, quite a few people are playing these now. It's paying the 1,000 life points to banish that spell or trap, and that 1,000 life points isn't an issue. Dark Hole, like I said, just as an alternative to Regeki. I mean, if your opponent's going to be playing Christians and Vanities and locking you out, you want to be having more board destruction than just one Regeki. Swords of Revealing Light. For the pure fact that this will catch your opponent by surprise. Not many people are expected to play Sword of Revealing Light, and people can pop it, so it can sometimes be a wasted card. But sometimes when you drop this on your opponent, they'll be like, okay, and they're not prepared for it, so they don't have enough back row to pop. It's probably less so against metal foes because they do have enough ability to spin it or pop it or however you want it. But again, very nice card. Magical Springs. Now, when it first came out, really didn't like this card. It's now more effective. So, draw a number of cards equal to the number of face-up spell and trap cards your opponent controls. Then discard a number of cards equal to the number of face-up spell and trap cards you control. Until the end of your opponent's next turn, after this card is activated, spell and trap cards your opponent controls cannot be destroyed by battle or card effect. Also, their activation and effects cannot be negated. You can only activate 1 Magical Springs per turn. Right, the best time to drop this is when your opponent is a Metaphors player and puts 2 8 scales in. 2 8 scales, 2 1 scales, go bang, cool. Your Metaphors are not popping themselves. I'm going to draw for that. And because, in example, Blue Eyes don't run a hefty lot of back row, or any deck that doesn't run a hefty lot of face-up back row, I'm just going to draw 2, if not more. Against DDDs, if they've activated their contracts, you drop this on them. Yes, their contracts are protected, but you're drawing 3 cards. So you're either using it for draw power, or you're using it for general stasis. That again, it also locks out their Beowulf, because their Beowulf wants to pop their back row during the standby phase, and you just go Magical Springs. You're not popping it. You're going to take that 2,000 burn or 3,000 burn or whatever burn, and I'm going to draw cards. Because I have no face-up spell or trap cards, I'm not going to discard anything. Very nice draw. Can really, really stall out the Metaphors player. Very, very nice. You can get a couple of draws off of ABC Dragons, but then their hangers are protected, so not so much on that one. Mistaken Arrest. If your deck likes to draw, and so does your opponents, and you don't want to use actual Mistake or Thunder King Row, flipping a Mistaken Arrest during your opponent's turn can really, really hurt them. Until the end of your next turn, after this card resolves, neither player can add cards from their deck to the hand except by drawing them. So, if your opponent's deck likes to search, let's go with Dark Lords. They want to activate Banishment to search. You go Mistaken Arrest, and you go no. Dark Magicians like to search quite a bit as well. So do Blue Eyes with their melodies. So do ABCs with their hangers. So this card can be a really nice card if you've set your board up. So do DDDs as well, by the way. You set your board up, you flip this on your opponent, and they're like, Now, like I said before, Metaphors do less searching per se, because they just set directly from deck. However, Mistaken Arrest can really slow them down and stop them, and it's quite nice to be able to go, no. Mask Change 2. Now, this is more specific for a dark deck, more so DDDs. So Joe plays this in his DDDs, and it's very, very nice because it lets you get to Dark Claw. Now, again, it's not perfect in every deck. It's a nice cheap alternative if you've got a Dark Claw, and we know how painful Dark Claw can be to some decks. Taking away your opponent's graveyard with stuff like Macross Cosmo and D-Fidget also hurts you. However, stuff like Dark Claw can just get rid of your opponent's graveyard. Very, very nice card to do. So Master Change 2 can help out quite a lot if you're running a dark deck. Forbidden Lance and Forbidden Chalice. Now, again, these are cards that I don't think your opponent's going to expect. So when they get dropped on them, they're like, whoa, what the heck just happened? So Chalice, target one face-on monster on the field. Until the end phase, it gains 400 attack, but its effects are negated. So a negate effect, and if there's a weak monster that needs its effect to go off, you just go, yeah, whatever. You can have your extra attack points. You're not going to beat over me, but your effects are negated. Lance, target one face-up monster on the field. Until the end of that phase, that target loses 800 attack, but is unaffected by your opponent's other spell. But is unaffected by the effects of other spells and trap cards. So, if your opponent, let's say, summons a Gofu, and they want to pop it using their scale, you activate Lance. Cool. Loses 800 attack. Doesn't really matter. But you can't pop the Gofu. Yes, you can pop the tokens. It's just an example. But anything that wants to use in a spell, that opponent wants to use in a spell on their own monsters, you can lock them out. If you want to protect your monsters, so if your opponent goes, I've got a really big monster, I'm now about to beat over your Dark Claw, you go, Lance, say what? You ain't attacking me, you lose 800 attack, you do it in a damage calculation as well, so they can't retract. Boom, you've just got rid of their big beater and kept your monsters alive. Very, very, very good. Air traffic control. If your opponent controls 3 or more monsters, they cannot declare an attack. So, there are so many decks that like to pendulum full boards. There are so many decks like Dark Lords, yes, and DDDs that want to have more than one monster on board. If you want to have more than one monster on board, I'm not going to let you declare an attack. Again, it's back row, it can be easily popped. However, your opponent won't expect this. They'll just be like, what? What does that card do? Where did that card come from? What? Huh? They'll be so confused by it, and they'll already have a full board. They'll be like, I'm in, so what do I do now? So I have to overlay more, I have to overlay less, I can't extend my plays. So that kind of helps lock them down. So that is it for the spells. Now we'll go on to the traps. Told you guys before, it's a very long video, but this is to help you all for this weekend's regional. So the cards that you should have, or you must really try and get hold of, I know they're a bit more expensive, so unfortunately I can't control that. Dimensional Barrier locks out every person's extra deck. A little bit harder against Metaphors because they do have access to both Synchros and to Fusion, but dropping this on can really disrupt their plays. This can disrupt plays against anyone. ABCs, boom, Cool Fusion, duh, whatever. They can go into XYZs, yes, that's a shame. Drop a Flying C on them, they ain't doing nothing. DDDs, Cool Fusions, they're not going very far. Blue Eyes, Cool XYZs, they can probably go into the Synchros, but if they've already set up their board with 2 Blue Eyes going into an XYZ, disrupt their play. It's a very, very nice disrupting play card, however, it is quite expensive. Anti-Spell Fragrance. This will slow down many a deck, could also do yours in. However, if you don't run heavy spells or traps, or you don't mind setting up your boards, flipping this, and locking your opponent out, good night, Irene. This does stop pendulums as well, but with Metaphors, they can just go through Raccoon, overlay, detach, spin with a Ignister. But Anti-Spell is still a very, very good card because if they don't open up with that hand, they are pretty much doomed. It slows down DDDs massively because they can't use their contracts or anything like that to speed through their decks, especially if there's turbo builds out there that rely on spells, they're going to have to wait a turn. Solemn Strike, if you're not maining it, side it. If you're not maining it at 2, 3, whatever, main the rest. It's a very, very good card, helps you out massively. Vanity's Emptiness, if you're not maining this card, why not? Yes, it can lock you out, but if you build up such a strong enough board, you can Vanity's Lock and lock your opponent out. Yes, they can discard and try and pop it, or do one way or another to try and get rid of it. However, if you lock your opponent out, that's it. That is game. They can't do a hell of a lot if you've got a full board. So that's it for the main traps. Now, we do have a hefty section of honourable mentioned traps. Floodgate Trap Pile. I quite like this card. If you can play Refugia, you must main this card. Really like this card. It's a quicker version of Quaking. Now, obviously, I personally like Quaking myself. Really, really nice card. Pretty much love it. But the issue with traps like this is they can get popped really, really easy, and because they're so specific, it's right up until the moment. Typhoon. It's your trap card. If you don't play hefty back row, you target one face-up spell or trap card on the field, destroy it. If your opponent controls 2 or more spell cards and you control no spell or trap cards, you can activate this card from your hand. So it's a nice little card to pop back row if need be, especially in that example when they're setting anti-spells if you're a Pendulum player. Skill Drain. Quite a lot of decks these days rely on their monsters' effects. If you can take away your opponent's monsters' effects, stop their game, and then be able to outbeat them with a bigger beat stick, this could be a very, very surprise card. Chaos Trap Pole. So many lights and darks out there at the moment. Yes, Metaphors is probably the main deck until DDDs get their first real test of this weekend, but being able to Chaos Trap Pole your opponent's Blue Eyes or anything like that is very, very nice. Eradicator Epidemic Virus. Again, dependent on what type of deck you are playing, this card can win you games. Tribute 1 Dark Monster with 25 or more attack and choose spell or trap. Check all spell and trap cards on your opponent's side of the field, your opponent's hand, and all cards they draw until the end of your opponent's third turn after this card's activation, and destroy all cards of that chosen type. If your opponent relies on spells, if your opponent relies on traps, you are negating them, you are sending them to the grave. They are doing nada for 3 turns. Wakubu, because why not? You make all battle damage inflicted by your opponent's monster 0, and I'm pretty sure it protects your monsters. Your monsters can't be destroyed by battle either, so it protects you for a turn. Just a little tech. It's very, very rare that you'll see this, but I find it quite funny. Ceasefire. The time when you know you're going to go in time because you've got a slow deck, you drop this card on your opponent during time, burn them for game. Burn them for a huge amount of damage that they're not expecting, and you just watch the game go. Change Disappearance. This can really hurt DDDs. When a monster with 1,000 or less attack is summoned, banish that monster with 1,000 or less attack, then your opponent banishes all cards with the same name as that card from their hand and or deck. So, you can activate this on Kepler, you can activate this on Lamia. Now, Lamia would be a good one to take out, but obviously they have been able to play before Lamia came out. But you hit them, happy days. Yes, their effect will still go off when it's summoned, but being able to get rid of all their monsters so that they can't play is very, very nice. This will also be quite helpful when Junichi Seas or Zodiacs come out as well. Torrential Tribute, another one of them long forgotten cards that can catch your opponent by surprise. They will not expect this. You set a trap and they're like, cool, I'm going to build up my board, here we go, there's my board there, oh bang, Torrential Tribute, out. Yes, you use your monsters as fodder, so unless you have monsters that are unaffected by traps, or if you've drawn into a dead hand and you're like, right, okay, I've got a Torrential Tribute, let's set this guy. Let my opponent build a board, bang, Torrential Tribute, they ain't building nothing, they're back to the same situation you were. Stygian Dirge. Now, this can be very, very helpful against everything bar fusions. So reduce the levels of all face-up monsters your opponent controls by 1. This will hurt them on synchros unless they have a very, very wide range of synchro ability. This will hurt XYZs if they're mainly focused on XYZ. Again, like I said, its biggest weakness is probably fusion because they don't really require on level as much. But this can again catch your opponent by surprise and they'll just be like, so you're telling me I can't synchro with my goat? So you've anti-spelled me, so I can't activate my pendulum scales. And now you're telling me I can't synchro my Gofu with my Magispector unless I'm going into a level 6. Well, damn. Also, Blue Eyes are like, I've got beaters on board. That's about as good as it gets. Gravity Bind. I really like this card. I find it quite funny. If you are running a small level deck, I quite liked running it in Despots back in the day for the pure fact that you can rely on level 3. You can sit on Despot 3, boot him up as high as you like and beat over anything. Again, it's not a really main card. You're not going to sit in loads and loads of decks. But if you're playing a heavy XYZ build, and you know your opponent's playing a heavy synchro build, whatever build, you go with Gravity Bind. An alternate to Gravity Bind as well is Grave of the Super Ancient Organisms. All face-up level 6 or higher special summon monsters on the field cannot declare an attack or activate their effects. So it's a 2-in-1. Next up, Light Imprisoning and Shadow Imprisoning Mirrors. They're okay. Again, the game today isn't just light and dark. You do have fire. You do have a hell of a lot more. Magic Drain, very, very nice against Pendulum decks that don't run a lot of spells. You hit, they activate their scale, you hit Magic Drain, they don't have any spells in hand, boom, bye, that scale goes. So basically, negate the activation of an opponent's spell card and destroy it. Your opponent can discard one spell card to negate this card's effect. So, if they don't have a spell card in hand, they're losing a scale to the grave already. Wiretap, if you think you're going to be facing quite a lot of hefty spells and traps, Wiretap is a nice little one to put in. Again, it's a bit slow, so it won't be seen in everything. Royal Decree, if you're expecting to face loads of Toad Paleozoics, or you're expecting to face something that has a hefty amount of backrow, drop a Royal Decree on it. Obviously, Denko is a hell of a lot faster, but a bit more expensive. Mistake, again, slower than Mistaken Arrest and locks yourself out, but again, maybe that underdog card that might get you through a game, especially if you're Metaphors. Imperial Iron Wall, who doesn't want to banish? You cannot banish cards. You cannot activate your Pot of Desires. You cannot activate your Swell Sign affecting Grave. You cannot do anything. You cannot activate a Law. You cannot draw nada. Goes and Match. Because each player can only control one attribute of a monster, send all other face-up monsters they control to the graveyard. So, DDDs, let's drop out Genghis, who is fire. Then let's flip Goes and Match on them. Crap, you ain't going nowhere, son. You are stuck on a fire monster until you get rid of him. Again, not so much against stuff, but it helps work in Blue Eyes, it helps work in Metal Foes because they all kind of work with one type. The other one is Rivalry of the Warlords. Again, very, very funny card. Each player must send monsters from his or her side of the field to the graveyard so that he or she only controls one type of face-up monster. As long as this card remains face-up on the field, each player can only summon or control one type of face-up monster. So, Spellcaster, Dragon, Fairy, Pyro, they can only control one. Yes, it's probably not as effective in today's meta, but it does stop people being able to go, cool, I'm playing a rank 7 deck, I'm going to make a Dragon. So that's the thing, it will stop your it will slow your DDDs down, they will not be able to get your Crystal and your Siegfried, they would only be able to have one. Master Restrict, if you are massively worried about getting hit with Kaijus or Lava Golems, drop your Master Restrict. Yes, it is a special summon, but it does require tributing. Master Restrict does not allow any cards to be tributed. Non-fusion area. So, if your card is treated as a fusion summon, neither player can fusion summon. So, it will stop your Metaphors if they're counted as a fusion summon. It will also stop your DDDs because they are counted as a fusion summon. Lose on turn, quite funny if you're playing something like that topped the other day in America, Ignites. If you're playing normal monsters, you are unaffected by this. This will not change you, but it will hurt your opponent massively. Again, it's kind of like a Steel Drain for one turn, slows your opponent down. If you can make it work so it doesn't slow you down, happy days. And then my final card is Different Dimension Ground. This is your Dark Claw for one turn and hoping that you don't get destroyed. Now, let's be honest, if you're attacking, let's say, Yang Zing Metaphors, if you're attacking their stuff and you know they're going to use their Grave effects, if you want to use Abyss Dweller, by all means. If you flip a different Dimension Ground, as long as they've not got a Mirror Force set that's going to blow up all your monsters, and you're not going to be sending cards to the grave, they all just get banished. Happy days. Otherwise, flip this during your opponent's turn, and if they want to discard stuff to be getting their game going, that's not going to be happening either. So that will stop out your melodies, it will stop out anything that you really want to be searching. So, this turn, any monster sent to the graveyard is removed from play instead. So, if you want to be discarding cards for cost, they will get banished, e.g. Blue Eyes sending their Stone, or Blue Eyes sending another Blue Eyes. So, that is it. I'm sorry it's such a long video, it's just kind of like a couple of ideas. I've probably lacklustered you with the amount of stuff that's been put down, but I'll do a quick recap of the main cards that I say please try and get hold of. Check out the rest of the video, note down what you feel that you can get hold of and what you feel would be quite good to be used in your deck and what you feel can change the game for you. It is all down to deck preference. So there is our monster lineup of the cards I say you probably need to have these cards in your side deck or a mixture of. Now obviously your side deck can be run according to the ban list, so you can be running more than ones of certain cards if need be and if you want to see them more regularly. So in this example here, you would probably main If you're not maining the barriers, you probably want your 3. You probably want your 3 strikes, your 3 anti-spells, your Vanity's Emptiness at 1, System Downs at 3 or 2, depending on what your regional is going to be and how many decks. If you think you're only going to face DDs, build your side deck so that it only hurts DDs but not yourself. If you think you're going to be fighting a range of decks, build it so that it hits the most decks possible and that each card in there can affect more than one deck. Do not just put a card in. For example, do not put System Down in if you think you're going to face one ABC. And sacrifice it for your anti-spells. Make sure every card you put in your side deck can affect multiple decks. That is my best advice per se. If you feel you're only going to be facing 3 different types of decks, then yes, max out on all of these, put them to 3. If you feel you're going to be facing such a range of deck, put cards like this to 2 so that you have a nice range of cards so you can cover multiple decks. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope this helps. I hope this gives you an idea for this week's regional. If you are coming along, we look forward to meeting you, seeing you, and having a fun day of Yu-Gi-Oh! If you're not coming or you can't come because you live in a different country, do not worry, because we will be doing feature matches so you can see how our regional unfolds over the weekend and who will be taking the top in, as far as I'm aware, the first regional to involve DDDs in this year's meta. So, thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out our giveaway. So we are giving away a Pendulum Domination structure deck. We have 2 of those to give away. Check that out in the link in the description below. Don't forget to give the video a big thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification button so you don't miss anything. And follow us throughout the rest of the year and further on to get all your Yu-Gi-Oh! News, bits and bobs. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share. And as always, guys, good luck at this week's regional and happy dueling. If you like that video, why not check out our other videos available? We've got more deck profiles, pack openings, and of course duels. And don't forget to click on the most important button of all, that subscribe button, right in the bottom left hand corner.